Iranian armed forces threatened to strike military aid shipments to Israel as hostilities between the two countries continued on Saturday. The warnings came on the heels of media reports quoting U.S. officials showing B-2 stealth bombers are headed over the Pacific. Israel and Iran launched new strikes in a second week of hostilities, with the Isfahan nuclear facility targeted again. Reports quoting U.S. officials show B-2 stealth bombers have taken off from the U.S. and are headed over the Pacific. However, it is not clear if that move marks the start of U.S. involvement into this conflict. A spokesperson also warned that any country sending military or radar equipment by boat or aircraft to Israel will be considered an act of aggression against Tehran and will be targeted. Iranian spokeswoman said, and I quote, that's Iran spokesman said, and I quote, "We warn that sending any military or radar equipment by boat or aircraft from any country to assist the Zionist regime will be considered participation in the aggression against Islamic Iran and will be a legitimate target for the armed forces." Separately, Yemen's Houthis have threatened to attack U.S. ships and battleships in the Red Sea if the Trump administration intervenes to back Israel's strike on Iran. The Houthis had stopped such assaults after reaching a ceasefire agreement with Washington last month. In a statement, Houthi military spokesperson Yahya Sarriah cautioned that Israel's strike on Iran is, quote, a battle for the entire nation. Sarriah said the group is closely monitoring hostile movements and will take all necessary measures to defend their people and homeland. Irina Zuckerman is a U.S. national security analyst and also Middle East expert and national security attorney. She's now joining us live from Washington, D.C. Ms. Zuckerman, welcome to the program and thank you very much for making time for us. Let me begin by the latest. Israel does not want to wait for Trump's two-week deal-seeking deadline. Instead, it wants to hit Iran's nuclear sites now, even if it has to do it alone. Do you think Israel will manage to hit Fordo at this juncture? And if it does, what will be the repercussions of that?
Thank you so much for the question. There are several possibilities, one of which is that there could be an attack but which causes some damage but does not fully destroy the facility. Still, from Israel's perspective, even setting back the damage, first of all, facilitates an entry for the U.S. because there's less work to do and fewer potential repercussions. And second, it sets back the program, so it gives Israel breathing room for better preparations and future operations. Second possibility is Israel is persistent and manages to destroy most of the program, most of the facility. The question, of course, is about environmental risks and leaks from the program. Much depends on how active it actually is, but there's a very easy way to prevent this from happening. All the Iranian regime needs to do is to agree to dismantle the program voluntarily under international supervision, and then Israel does not have to attack. The third possibility is that the U.S. decides to get involved sooner rather than later and provide assistance in destroying the program in a way that does not cause any irreparable damage to the environment, but does set it back so significantly that it likely cannot be restored anytime soon. Finally, there's a fourth possibility. The operation is complicated, will probably require some level of ground assets as well, and Iran in the meantime could race to try to do a nuclear test or procure the bomb, a nuclear weapon by some other means. That is less likely, it's highly risky, but it's still a possibility, which is why we are seeing that the Iranian regime is still refusing to negotiate. They may be making that calculated risk.
Ms. Zuckerman, so what's Israel's endgame here if they are eliminating Iranian scientists and nuclear policy and negotiations strategists. What's their endgame?
The endgame is to set back the nuclear program as far as possible to ensure that whether regime survives, transitions to some other form, or falls completely, entirely, there is no direct threat to Israel's security in the near future. Now, it is entirely possible that the best outcome for all involved is if the regime transitions to some benevolent entity that agrees to dismantle the program, abide by international law, and negotiate with other countries in good faith. That possibility is a good hope, but it's not highly likely at this time, and it's not something that anyone, including Israel, can count on automatically. So the best course of action is to prevent, to degrade the Iranian capacity so that no matter who is in power, there's no danger of them being immediately a direct threat to the regional security.
Ms. Zuckerman, you are in Washington. I'm sure you've seen the divide that this whole conflict has caused Americans. But I want to know from you your predictions. What do you think the Trump administration is planning to do in the next 2 weeks or less?
We are seeing from their current actions, they're definitely trying to put as much psychological pressure on the regime and its proxies as possible through strategic communications indicating strong deterrence. I think they are showing that they're backing what Israel doing 100%, which is in itself a major victory for Israel and a departure from previous times. Now, there are a couple of options short of direct strikes on Iran that U.S. can do in the meantime in the next 2 weeks. It can actually transfer some of the weapons Israel needs directly to Israel and let Israel finish the job on its own with those weapons. It can provide assistance in the defensive assistance in countering drones and intercepting missiles, which to some extent it may already be doing. The third possibility is coordination with Israel in cyber strikes that are non-lethal but disable significant Iranian capacity, facilitating prolonged Israeli action, which without U.S. assistance can take longer than 2 weeks in the future. In the meantime, a lot may depend on whether there is any retaliation by Iran or its proxies against U.S. entities, whether Israel's actions degrade overall Iranian capacity to such a degree, not only nuclear but also conventional, that there is no real serious threat to backlash against the U.S. and this becomes a very low-risk, high-reward strategy for the Trump administration, helping finish off the nuclear program, potentially bringing Iran back to the negotiating table, and being able to get an easy military win without any sacrifices. Finally, the Trump administration likes 2 weeks. We are now in the 8th or 9th week of 2 weeks. Trump promised to make his decision regarding Russian sanctions. The 2 weeks that the administration is talking about now could easily turn into an indefinite pause in decision-making, depending on how things go in Washington and whether Trump continues to play with the idea of getting some sort of a deal with the regime. Now, if the regime falls completely, that could change the calculus very easily. A lot will depend on what happens on the ground.
Ms. Irina Zuckerman, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much for your time and for talking to WION World is One today.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.